Welcome back to the Evolv podcast. I'm Rhiannon.
And I'm your better host, Brendan.
All right, we'll leave it at that. But for now, pretty much what this podcast is all about is self-development, health and fitness, and our journey starting as brand new business owners.
Let's go. Make sure that you share this around because I'm telling you right now, this is the best podcast you've ever seen.
Enjoy, guys. Ciao. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Wait.
Did you learn that from James Smith?
Yeah.
I want to leave that in there.
Yeah. That's how we're going to start the podcast. Welcome back to the Evolv podcast with Brendan and Rhiannon today.
And James Smith.
And James Smith. Today we have a very special guest. She's not only one of our nutritionists, but she has a great career in the NRL. And we're going to introduce her. She is Sophie Curtain. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries. Well, tell everyone, I've obviously introduced you a little bit, but tell everyone about what you do and we'll go from there.
Cool. So I guess quickly we'll touch on the sporting part first. I guess that's probably the most interesting part.
Yep.
So I play in the NRLW the last 2 seasons for the Wests Tigers, but I've been playing rugby league since I was 7, so about 15 years now. I bounced around, I guess, rep teams growing up, and then I guess when I turned 12, it wasn't really a pathway for many girls to continue playing. So for those who don't know, you can play with the boys up until you're 12.
Yep.
And so obviously I started when I was 7, so I played all the way through. And then once you get to 12, it's kind of a bit of a guessing game to whether you can play or if there are any women-only comps. And I was fortunate enough to kind of join the first one that kind of grew, and I was like perfect timing in regards to my age. So continued playing in a women's comp until I was about 16, and then started playing for the Wests Tigers for a few years in the Tashagal, which is equivalent to like Harold Mats and SG Ball for the boys. And then I played in the first ever under-18s women's origin team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Really?
yeah. So in 2019.
Was that the first one ever?
For under-18s for girls, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it was
How
really
was
cool.
that?
It was really cool. So we got to be the curtain raisers for the women's, like the one that played on TV. We were the
Yep.
curtain raisers for them at North Sydney Oval in 2019,
That's so
which was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
But how long has your origin been running? The women's origin?
It used to be called the Interstate Challenge before it was like on TV. So it's been going for like a really, really long time. But in terms of like actually being on TV, it's only been like 7 or 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
So like I remember going to Wynn Stadium to go watch New South Wales and Queensland play as like the Interstate Challenge before it was like actually considered origin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm keen for this podcast because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. Brendan, you've been doing a nutrition course at the moment.
Oh, yeah. The same one that Sophie's
The
doing.
same one that Sophie's doing. So
No, she's finished. When I first met her, she was like, I did this nutrition course. And I was like, you know what? I want to do one now.
Oh. and here we are.
Here we are, that's it.
So I feel like I'm going to be asking a lot of questions about nutrition today.
Totally fine.
And also about your history and your past and everything that's led you up into this point in time right now. So were you all, like football was a big part of your life, but were you doing anything prior to...
Well, footy.
Footy. Were you doing anything prior to footy to sort of move over to football?
Well, I guess I've always been, as I mentioned, I've always been playing football, and I was lucky enough to not, I guess, have any gaps between any seasons or anything like that. But like I said, played Origin and then went through to Harvey Norman, which is women's reserve grade, and went straight from that at 17 years old to play in
Oh, so I
reserve
got
grade.
the same name as the men's as well. They're
Theirs
called
is-
Harvey Norman.
I think theirs is...
Harvey Norman?
I don't know, it's honestly changed
Yeah.
every year because
The sponsors change.
Yeah, it used to be called the Toyota's Cup, but
Yep.
it's knock on effect now.
Oh,
That's
really?
what it's called now. So yeah,
Oh,
the
there you
men's
go.
is knock on effect.
Yep.
And so I played Harvey Norman from 17 over the last few years, and then the last 2 years I played in the NRLW. But I guess going back to when I was about 12, so like the uncertainty in whether I'd play rugby league
When you were
again.
playing with the boys still.
Yeah, I was still playing with the boys, but I guess at the time.
How'd you match up against them? What was that like? Oh, at 12, you actually, there's
I
not much
used
of a
to
difference.
I used to go pretty well. My mum used to make me wear a headgear, and like I'd take my headgear off after the game, and obviously like my ponytail would fall out,
Yeah.
and everyone would be like, "Oh my god, it's a girl!"
Side swipe.
Yeah, that's
Didn't
it.
expect
So
that.
yeah, they were a bit of a plot twist, but
Yeah.
I guess leading into that was kind of how I started expanding like my sporting background, and I played every sport under the sun at school, and did state cross country, touch, I did athletics, I did volleyball, soccer, all of the above. But when I was kind of turning 12, I didn't know if I'd ever play rugby league again.
Yeah, wow.
And so I wanted to replace that with a martial art. And so I started training in Muay Thai, and then I started that around 10, and then I started competing when I was about 12. And so for a few years there, I'd say rugby league kind of took a back seat.
Yep.
And that kind of, led me to excelling in Muay Thai and competing at a pretty high level in that.
Yep.
And then I stopped fighting when I was about 18.
Okay.
So yeah, about 6 years of like competing in Muay Thai and about 8 years of training. And I still do it for fun now, but like it's very much just a hobby and for fitness. Rather than
fitness.
More the training side of things. Yeah.
And then like we kind of got to not the pinnacle in Muay Thai, but as a junior, I was the pinnacle of Muay Thai. And we saw more, I guess, opportunity for growth in rugby league. It was starting, there were reps and we were juggling both reps in school and fighting in our senior years at school. And so we kind of had to pick one.
That would have been tough.
It was really, really hard and like really tiring to juggle it all. And even just like, I guess the body requirements for each sport's so different.
Yeah,
100%.
So
it was really hard to juggle in that regard as well. And
like footy compared to Muay Thai, it's like such a big difference.
Yeah, like one obviously was, trying to cut weight and get smaller and get leaner. And the other one was, playing in the middle as a lock hooker, but it's like, okay, so I needed to be a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and I'm obviously quite a small middle. Yeah. And so it was like really hard to juggle both of the demands of the sport and just honestly fitting all of the training in. It's like Muay Thai to compete, I had to train 6 days a week for a couple of hours. I also had school from 9 till 3. I was going to the gym before school. Some days I was doing, 3 sessions a day. I would do gym, school, Muay Thai, and then footy afterwards.
That's
and
nuts.
like playing on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. And then all while, juggling life, juggling social life, juggling my HSE.
That's full on.
Yeah.
Far out. Yeah. What made you want to do that? Because, you would have seen all of your peers kind of, just doing school and that was all they did, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they might have played their odd sports, but because you were competing at such a high level, you needed to train 6 days a week. How did you manage that?
Obviously it was quite hard and there's no denying that. And I definitely had to give up, I guess, some aspects or, social events and partying. And I definitely did, have a bit of fun, but it was definitely selective when I did it. And I think because my personality is very much like all in or nothing, that has applied to every aspect of my life, whether that's sporting, whether that's schooling, whether that's now my business, everything. I kind of have that opinion and that, I guess, attitude towards it. So I saw all of my peers, just, I guess, being normal teenagers, but one, I love sport. 2, I'm really competitive. And 3, that's just kind of my personality.
Yeah. Well, you wanted more out of your life than you were giving.
Yeah. And also I was pretty good at it. So it was easy to go to train and I'd go to training or I was working at the gym at the time as well. So go to training or go to work. And I'm happy to talk to people. I'm pretty outgoing and pretty confident in public speaking. So it just made everything really easy.
Yeah. That's mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you told me that period of time between 10 and 18, you were basically managing the gym.
Pretty much.
Muay Thai studio.
Yeah, so I was working there as well as obviously training and fighting. The work kind of took a backseat when I was in my fight camps leading up to the prep. But I was running kids classes, I was running beginners classes. Yeah. If our head trainer wasn't there, we would open and close the gym. We would run the books. We would, do all the drills and we'd explain everything and run all the classes. And although we were 15, 16, 17, 18. I have a twin sister. And I've got an older brother as well who were the most experienced fighters at the gym. So we were the youngest, but we were also
opening and closing the gym.
Yeah, we were also the most experienced, and everyone that kind of knew who we are and knew the caliber of, I guess, of us as athletes and us as Muay Thai fighters and trainers, didn't question it because it was...
Well, you got belts as well, didn't you?
Yep. So I've got 2 belts. So I've got a national title belt, a state title belt. I won 4 national gold medals, and then I won 1 silver at the World Championships and 3 consecutive gold medals at the Worlds.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a career.
We're just a bunch of podcasters. But that's a crazy period of your life. It would just snowball affected in a way.
Yeah, very much.
Well, it's definitely an all-in.
Yeah, all-in approach for sure.
I kind of dove headfirst into it and just went off.
Yeah. Was that all in the same weight class?
No. So I started fighting when I was 12, and I kind of so obviously it's actually
your weight class would have changed from 12 to 18.
But I kind of probably spent most of my time in the middle range. But as I got older and I'm sick of cutting weight, it kind of grew. And obviously as I got a little bit older and bigger, it bounced up. But depending on the fighting competition as well, if it was a one-off fight, I could cut a little bit more weight versus if it was a nationals or a world championships competition, you have to weigh in multiple times. And so I wasn't able to cut as much weight. So I kind of had to be strategic in how I cut weight or selected a weight class. And also being a twin as well, you can't be in the same weight category. So it was like, okay, one
Oh,
of us,
really?
yeah. So either one of us needed to cut more, or one of us needed to go up because we were
Oh,
similar.
that would have been tough as.
Yeah. So we had to like.
Because you both competed at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like she was competing with me at nationals and the worlds and stuff, and so one of us had to either cut weight to go down a category, or one of us had to go up.
Yeah, that's tough.
So we were like trying to juggle like each other's weight as well as I guess our own, and
That would have just added to the stress.
yeah,
as well.
and the way nationals works and the worlds work, if you win a gold medal in say the 54 kilo division, you have to compete at the worlds in that division.
Really?
And so nationals used to be in January, and then the worlds were in August. So if you're in your teens and you have a growth spurt,
Oh no.
You're kind of stuffed.
just screwed. Otherwise, like you either have to cut a ridiculous amount of weight, or you have to negotiate with one of the other gold medalists if they'll swap. Because you can't have two. So like if you win a gold medal at nationals for Australia in the 54, there's someone that's won in the 51 and the 57 kilos. There's nowhere for you to go. You either have to can't fight because you can't make the weight, or you have to switch with someone, and they have to be willing to do
What a
that.
different world.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's mental.
Yeah, but she's a weight class specialist,
Oh no, 100%. I'm just saying. It's
She won
crazy
at
to
multiple weight classes.
The thing is, we don't talk to people like this. Or I don't, for instance. But it's good like hearing.
Fighters.
Huh?
Fighters.
Yeah. Have you spoken to a fighter?
No.
No. So.
What are you talking about?
Oh, now we are.
Fighter
Exactly.
now.
Yeah, I'm a fighter.
Oh, yes.
You've done
You're the
your
only
one
non-fighter.
I'm the only
He's
non-fighter.
a BJJ black belt. Have you not
Yeah.
heard?
No, you heard it here first, people.
I've got 3 stripes.
Yeah, but it's very interesting to hear because like you see it on TV, you hear about it, but
Well, you watch a lot of fights.
yeah, but like I'm not into it. Like I don't know the world behind it, like Sophie does.
Yeah.
So it's interesting hearing.
Gold medals, belts,
Yeah,
fighting in different weight
nationals,
classes.
like it's just crazy to hear. It's also it's a
You
good
just know
journey.
the octagon.
I what?
You just know the octagon.
I don't know anything about fighting. I just watch it on TV. If it's a big hype, I know 1 or 2 names. But that's about it.
But yeah, I guess where my first interest in nutrition probably started, because obviously it's a
Yeah.
weight-based sport, and it's pretty difficult
Always
to juggle.
cutting weight and
Yeah, it's
everything.
pretty difficult to juggle as a growing teenager, regardless of whether you're a male or female. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started, I'd say.
And
100%.
you're going through obviously that growth spurt. So you said 10 you started fighting, and then up until about 18, and you were playing footy in that time as well.
Yeah.
Where was your head at? Like that's a lot of discipline, a lot of consistency. Like how did you manage that side of things?
I don't know. It's kind of all I've ever known, really.
It just flowed, eh?
Yeah, it was just like, okay, I'm obviously quite a competitive and driven person, so that part of it wasn't that hard, but it's like I also really enjoyed what I was doing.
Yeah.
And my parents were always, school first, so I couldn't let my grades slip or anything like that. And, I love learning, so that wasn't that hard either. But it was always, I would go to school, come home, do my homework, and then if I had time, I'd probably have a nap before training.
Yeah, little power nap,
Yeah, that's
reset.
it. Yeah, because I've
Well, you needed it, the recovery and everything.
Yeah, of course. But, I'd, go to training, come home, I'd probably not have dinner until 9:30, 10 o'clock as a teenager, and then pack my bag, get ready for the next day. And so it was just kind
Go
of...
straight to the gym in the morning.
It was just like routine. It was just
rinse and
what I
repeat.
did. I didn't know any different. And, obviously 10's quite young to start it. And obviously wasn't as full on when I was 10. But, as soon as I started competing
But as you were progressing...
pretty much as soon as I started competing at 12, and then by the time it like really took off, I was about 14.
Yeah.
And then from basically there onwards, it was just my entire teenage life.
Wow.
And even like going on holidays, I'd have to get up and train. I got to watch my weight.
Wow, really?
Do all of those kind of things.
Yep.
It was, it was pretty crazy, but yeah, like I said, I didn't really know any different. So it was just my normal.
Yeah.
And even like I look back at it now, I'm like, that was crazy. I don't know how I did it, but I just
The
didn't.
blinkers were on like
Literally,
this.
I didn't know any different. And like I obviously would
You
compare.
were just like all in. That's all you were focusing
Yeah,
on.
and yeah, I guess I think that obviously winning the first world title and the first national title, I was like, okay, I had to go back and defend it.
It gives
So
you momentum.
It gave me a little bit more, not confidence, but like it gave me a little bit more pressure. So I was like, okay, I got to train harder. I've got to be better. Everyone's chasing my tail now.
Yeah.
Obviously injuries and things like that coming in. And I was obviously playing multiple sports at school and stuff as well. So I had a little bit of, change of scenery.
Yeah.
And, obviously I love playing all different sports and didn't have much of a social life,
Yeah.
to be completely honest, outside of sport.
Yeah.
So, I just...
But your social life was sport because you were involved in teams though.
Yeah, and so although Muay Thai is an individual sport, obviously, there's a group of fighters and we were all training together every day and, we got quite close and things like that. But, and obviously competing with kind of similar age people, we went through the ranks with them all. So
exactly.
we were going to nationals. And
even the people you competed against,
we
you would
knew,
have known them.
we knew all of them. They knew who we were. Obviously, it took a year or two for them to figure out who we were, but because a lot of them are from different states and like all over Australia. So, and then as we kind of attended the Worlds every year, we kind of regularity of athletes that are going, pretty much. Yeah. And so by the third year, I was named team captain of the Australian team, and I won a couple of awards. Australian athlete of the year, and then in my last year, I won best female competitor at the entire competition.
Well done.
Thanks. So like
well
it was
done.
it was like obviously everyone kind of knows everyone, and the same with football. It's quite a small community, so kind of everyone knows everyone, and
I feel like I've heard a bit of this story, but hearing it now live, I'm just like, wow, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. It's not just like, oh, cool, this is what you did. No. There's a whole network behind it, mate. It's
what
crazy.
I'm confused by is obviously from 12 to 18, you were competing at that high level in Muay Thai, but then you started playing footy at high level at 18 as well.
Well, I actually started playing a high level at 16.
Oh.
So I was playing.
So you were competing at both at the same time?
Yeah.
How were you recognised for playing footy when you were like so driven in the Muay Thai area?
Just happened.
It just
everything happens for a reason. And we actually were speaking about this the other day. This is a question for you. Do you reckon the sport chooses you, or you choose the sport?
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like people probably choose sport based on the genetics and things like that. So like if you're really tall, you're probably going to be a basketballer or something like that. Whereas if you're a bit shorter, really skinny, you might be a runner or or something like that. So I feel like it's a combination, but I feel like it's also obviously your environment and where you grew up and where you live and things like that. So it's a bit of both, and your interests obviously can change.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had older siblings that played rugby league, obviously. Where I grow up and where I live, rugby league's a pretty predominant sport in my area as well, and my
that's what led you down that way.
Yeah, and my personality, I'm not the girliest girl ever, so like I'm lean more towards those, not aggressive, but slightly more physical.
Hide in the ponytail and turn the boys like this is it.
Yeah, and
I'm coming at you right now.
I think as well, I took it as a little bit of a challenge as well, being one of very very few girls that played like these kind of sports. I took it as a bit of a challenge, to be like, oh, you say I can't do it or I shouldn't be doing it. Well, I want to prove you wrong.
Sounds like you like a challenge.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so as well. Far out. So that period would have been crazy, and you would have had a whole bunch of mentors along the way, or someone you looked up to. We have another question for you. Who is your role model?
Can I come back to that? Because I actually don't know. I've been asked this many times, and I don't have anyone that actually sticks out. There's a couple of people that have definitely played like a very significant role in my life and my careers in either Muay Thai or footy. But there's a few people that definitely stick out, but I don't know if I have just one person.
Yeah. No,
so,
I was going to say you might have had people in
different areas of my life.
You've had people in league. You probably have people in just the nutrition field as another aspect of your life.
And even at school, like obviously I was quite busy and quite time limited and pretty tired.
Teachers.
So, like, some of the teachers obviously recognised that life wasn't always easy and I was pretty busy.
Yeah.
And being an athlete, it's like not all rainbows and sunshine. Like there's injuries, there's you're not getting selected or things like that don't necessarily go your way, and so you've got to be able to control all of that and deal with all of that
while
as well.
Your
as
headspace as well.
And while the rest of life stresses and being a teenager and going through puberty, like all of those crazy things that are hard enough on their own, let alone like juggling them all together. So
while playing high level sport.
Yeah. And so I'd probably say there'd be a handful of teachers, there'd be a handful of teammates through footy that have kind of guided me and supported me and been like massive mentors in rugby league, and then the same with Muay Thai. Like some of my old trainers, like I'm still in touch with. They've got a gym now in Sutherland, and I go and train when I can, and went to his wedding and I go to all of his fight shows, and so like I'm still pretty close with those kind of people, and even like the old Muay Thai presidents and stuff like that, like that live in different states, like I'm still in touch with them and still value their opinions and things like that. So
make sure that you like, comment and subscribe, and if friends are interested, share it around. All right, sorry guys, little intermission there. Just have to check all the acoustics, make sure it was all good. The reason I asked about your role model was because we had a guest on that's coming out tonight at 5 p.m. So make sure you tune in.
Who's role model?
Yeah. He was a big part of why I went into starting this business. And he asked us the question. He goes into his interviews and he always asks the people that he interviews, who's your role model? And it kind of depicts a little bit of a backstory of who they are and who they believe in and their morals moving forward from where they were to where they are now. through Muay Thai and through footy, you would have had that along the way. Were there differences between Muay Thai and footy in regards to the leadership that you saw from some of your coaches or some of your mentors?
I guess like obviously there are differences. The sports are different. I guess the kind of subgroup of people are probably a little bit different as well, and the ages are different. I think both being pretty predominantly male sports, I guess I probably led into some of the female leaders that were either ahead of me or older than me and kind of had more experience in like creating those pathways. So at football, I'd probably say it'd be my captain and one of my long-term teammates, Bo Tilvedi Welsh, who's been at the Tigers with myself since I was 16. So she's been there the whole time, and she's helped pave the way and has been one of the OGs who started when female rugby league kind of blew up. And she's been one of the best teammates and supporters and friends that I've had and captains. So I'd say probably in rugby league she's been a massive inspiration and a massive mentor for myself, even though we play different positions and things like that. But she's always been in my corner, and she's always backed me, even when injuries or doubts or whatever. She's always been there. And then in regards to Muay Thai, there were a couple of older fighters or people who had now retired who were working as coaches and things like that. And like I said, they're mostly from other states. But that they definitely helped put me under they put us under their wing, us as in Emily and I, my twin, under their wing, and kind of just kept reassuring us or guiding us or giving her advice on weights or fighting, training, and just I guess juggling everything.
That's actually cool. I feel like the best mentors are the ones that you see yourself basically becoming, or you want to emanate their qualities in a way.
And I think another thing that I guess probably stood out to myself in regards to those few people were they were just unapologetically themselves, and they just didn't care. They just did what they did and did it well. And believed in everyone, and were genuinely good people. And even like the I guess probably the teachers at school, they recognised that what I was doing wasn't easy, and they saw how hard I was working, and they saw how driven I was to achieve my goals, and I guess they wanted to support that in any way that they could. And so I guess that's probably the same in footy and rugby league. Separately, is that they saw how hard I worked and saw how well I was going, and they wanted to be a part of it and I guess help in any way that they can.
There was one question I wanted to ask you. It's a bit of a left field out there question, but I feel like it's becoming more prevalent in female sport like right now. What are your thoughts on transgender athletes joining the sports?
Interesting.
It's a very interesting topic.
It is.
Because, like, for instance,
because you're in like combat sports, and not just combat sports, but like sports that require high stature.
You've gone through your whole life sort of, let me rephrase that, sorry. You've started your career in Muay Thai and in football in a very influential time right now where female sports is on the rise. But now there's also a really prevalent time where transgender athletes are becoming a little bit more known and on the main stage of high, like boxing fights and stuff like that.
I guess probably the most recent example that everyone is aware of is the boxer from, I think it was Israel in the Olympics. And I'm not exactly sure what was correct, because there was rumours that she was a born male, or there was rumours that she was born female but just naturally had like high testosterone levels. So I don't actually want to comment too much on that because I don't know the full story, and I don't want to shoot myself.
That's something I don't.
That's what I mean. It's like I don't want to shoot myself in the foot either, because I don't actually know what the truth was. But from what I understand, she hadn't won every fight that she'd ever had, so she was beatable. But she may have just had, I don't know, a physiological or a physical advantage. But like, who's to say that someone that's taller and has a longer reach doesn't have a physiological advantage? I guess probably from my point of view, in terms of safety and regulation and fairness in sport, like regardless of my personal opinions, like outside of sport, I don't care what you do. I'm more than happy for you to express yourself however you like, and do whatever you want to do. Like that's, it doesn't bother me whatsoever, and I'm happy to support them in whatever endeavours they want. But in terms of sport and fairness and safety, especially in I think I guess physical contact sports or aggressive sports where there's more likely of getting injured and things like that, I don't personally think it's fair. But
it's a touchy subject.
That's what I mean. It's a very touchy subject as well. And again, like personally, I don't mind that. It doesn't bother me at all if people identify that way or want to go through that. But I also feel like in terms of fairness for everyone, that it's not probably safe in some aspects.
That's what I mean. Yeah, the safety part of it is just something that like really speaks out, because I posted on my story recently something about this soccer team that's playing in Sydney.
I saw your story actually, the soccer team, and they won. The closest game they had was 12-0.
Yeah.
I've seen it, yeah.
56 goals the whole
15
season.
1 goals and 3 goals scored against them. And
The
that's
whole
rep
season.
league.
Yeah.
Where scoreline should be like 1-1, 1-0, 2-0.
Should be tension throughout the whole season, but when they're
12-0, like nuts.
when they've conceded, when you put that into perspective, conceding 3 goals the whole season, like it doesn't sound fair at all. But again, it's such a touchy and left field subject that you have to be careful with what you say and how you project it and how you talk about it.
Yeah, of course.
But it's definitely I'm with you on that. Like it comes down to the fairness and the safety and the regulations at the end of it.
Is it prevalent in footy at the moment?
There are not too many that I'm aware of in
Yeah.
rugby league anyway. I obviously guess it's growing in every sport, and you know, every female, I guess, every female has probably different opinions on it, and even, you know, males that are involved in the game as well. But yeah, there's not too many people that I'm aware of that it kind of impacts at the moment.
Okay, let's get to some nutrition because I'm excited about this part. I get to learn about food. Sophie. Okay.
You know, our best podcast that we have just one-on-one, where it's just me and him talking, is the podcast where we talked all about nutrition.
Yeah, so me and him are just sitting there talking about our experience of nutrition, but only up until that point. Now we've obviously hired more nutritionists, and he's done a course, and
There was no nutrition team at that point.
there was none. So we were just
It
like,
was just a PT company at that point.
we're PTs, we'll guide people.
We know about nutrition.
Stay in your scope.
100%.
No, we were scrolling through James Smith and we're like, we know about nutrition.
Yeah.
yeah,
One or two videos about the macros and calories. We're like, oh, yes, we're on to
yeah,
it.
that's it.
What do you think about the PTs on Instagram, like James Smith and Adam Sullo, who are pushing a lot of nutrition topics, but they are just PTs? What do you think of that?
Like mixed, like obviously, you know, people like James Smith and even, you know, I don't know if you guys know of like Jeff Nippert and those kind of people,
Yeah.
like they're obviously very well educated, and so it seems fair that they're giving advice because the advice they're giving is scientifically accurate for the most part. You know,
I like how you said for the most part.
well, there's obviously PTs and, you know, personal trainers and, you know, other people in that field that are giving nutrition advice who, you know, have no qualifications or anything like that, and you guys can give, from my understanding, like pretty basic information in alignment with the Australian Guide to Healthy Eatings and basic nutrition recommendations, which is fine.
nothing
But like,
past that,
but giving like really specific advice or you
Yeah.
know, making recommendations on supplements and things like that, like that's potentially dangerous. And you know, it's, in my opinion, and I guess really in their code of conduct, that it's outside of their scope of practice, and you know, people should probably stay in their lane. And I
and they
feel
should
like,
get cancelled as well.
yeah, well, that too. But
We should get cancelled for that podcast.
Yeah. We'll just scroll back and delete it. Just in case we said anything wrong.
But yeah, it's not necessarily that, you know, I feel like there's more than enough work for everyone, but
Yeah.
I just genuinely feel like for safety and, you know, just knowing enough and being able to help people.
Stick
and,
in your lane.
yeah, it's, you know, for like the best result for the person is probably going to come from someone who's actually trained and qualified and educated in nutrition. It's like, I wouldn't go around telling someone how to, you know, do
Hop
it.
into a squat.
Yeah, like obviously I have a lot of experience in, you know, training myself, and you know, I do have qualifications in the strength and conditioning area, but it's like it's not my forte, it's not my expertise.
Like you can still coach it.
That's what I mean. I can still coach it to a degree, but it's like I would know where my limits.
But you focus more on the nutrition.
yeah, where my
side of
limits
things.
are, and like, you know, I feel like that people should probably take that approach in,
For everything.
Yeah,
right?
for everything. It's like you don't go to ear, nose, and throat specialist if you've got like a broken knee. Like it just makes no sense.
Or like you shouldn't compete in Muay Thai and footy at the same time.
Well,
Unless you're really good at both.
I was an expert in both, so
That's a mic drop moment. That is.
It's like, sorry, but I was too good at both.
you said it, not me.
With obviously nutrition, there was a spark or an interest at some period in your life. Do you know when that period was where
I know
you
this
became a
story.
nutritionist?
Yeah, so it would have been like early on in my fighting career. I guess
The cutting.
it's very much. It's probably changed a little bit now. The culture's changed, but you know, it's very old school. It's you do what your trainer told, like did, and what they were told by their trainer and their trainer. And it's just like this long line of misinformation most of the time. So it's like you just do what you were told, and I didn't know any different. And so I guess looking back now, I do things so differently. And you know, there are people like the
In
Fight
terms of cutting?
Dietitian, and you know,
Yeah.
Strive Dietetics, and you know, there's a bunch of like professionals in the nutrition space who work in weight cutting and are educated in it now. And there's like a lot of, I guess, misinformation in the Muay Thai world and in martial arts in general. And like it's pretty dangerous. Like people have died doing it. Like I know someone through a fighter who like passed away cutting weight, and she was in her early 20s.
Wow.
And I know she's not the only person that, you know, has unfortunately died as
Passed
a result.
away during the cut?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like she was.
Because was that like vicious?
Yeah, it was like she was in her.
Well, you're not eating food, not drinking water, and
That's
going to a
yeah, and like the
sauna as
heat,
well.
you know,
Yeah.
the heat exposure and stuff. Obviously, depending how you're cutting weight, you know, you're underfueling, you're dehydrated, and then obviously that puts increased risk of when you are fighting. If you're that dehydrated, your brain becomes dehydrated. You're more prone to concussion, and you know, like getting knocked out and things like that. It takes longer than 24 hours to kind of fully rehydrate if you're that dehydrated. And,
Yeah,
you know,
because you're in Thailand when you fight these competitions. The
yeah,
big
and
ones
some
anyway.
of them, yeah, the big ones of the World Championships were in Thailand. So it's like, you know,
And the
if
weather
you're-
there is
it's
cooked.
crazy. It's so hot over there, and you know, at those particular competitions, we're wearing lots of padding and things like that. Like I've seen some crazy stuff, and like people like vomiting as they're like walking in the ring and stuff. Like it's
I don't
absolutely.
think I would survive there, to be honest.
No.
It was like crazy, and like, you know, I don't talk about it too much, but you know, some of the things that I knew that people did to make weight was crazy, and like that's as kids or like as teenagers doing it's not good for your health, and like even myself, like
I'm assuming there was heaps of drugs and stuff like that, right?
not necessarily drugs, but like, you know, definitely under eating and under fueling. You know, do you guys know what LEA or REDS is? So it's basically it's basically like chronic under fueling, and it basically has like a lot of
Sports nutrition.
yeah, exactly. It has like a lot of negative physical consequences. So say for girls, you know, it's
For
losing
girls, it's actually a lot
it's like
worse.
losing their period and things like that, and having reduced bone density and like all of these other significant health problems that can then last and
They
be
can
long
last for a
term.
really long time.
Like
so-
I learned at uni this year that if you have like LEA or RED, so you like lose your period, which is called hypothalamic amenorrhea. If you lose it, and like the longer basically you don't have it, it like down the track can give you increased like risk of like cardiovascular problems.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's in cutting sports.
That's what I mean. Like I didn't know that when I was 14, 15, 16.
100%.
And it's like I was just doing what I was told and didn't know any better. But like looking back on it now, I could have done so much better. And obviously, if I'm training 3 days a week and growing and, you know, going to school and doing things like that, like I definitely was under eating. Like I have no doubt about it. And, you know, there's things like you can stunt your growth. You can, you know, have all of these other problems, you know, that people just typically aren't aware of. And like I said, if at an extreme level, like you can die doing it poorly. And
That
so,
is huge.
yeah, you can have, you know, kidney issues and, you know, things like that in like cutting weight. So it's sparked that interest, I guess, for myself in nutrition. And then as I got a little bit older and a little bit more educated, I started seeing a sports dietitian myself at the back end of my career. And that's when I kind of jumped up a few weight classes, because they were just like, would you rather go into a camp at a higher weight, but you are able to train better for longer and harder, and I guess not have to cut as much weight, so just walk around, I guess, closer to your weight or fight at a more natural weight, and you feel better and perform better, versus having a slight size and weight advantage, but like killing yourself
But
to get
feel
it.
weak
Yeah, feel
and-
weak, feel terrible, you know, not being able to train properly, being moody, being like, you know, hangry, like
And
just.
you posted that on your page just recently, did you?
I think so. Yeah, I've spoken about it a
You're
couple
making
times.
weight and everything?
Yeah, I speak about it a couple times, but
Not being shredded, like
yeah, like I don't have a lot of photos and videos of that period of my life, because
while you were young. You
wouldn't.
wouldn't.
yeah, well, and it was just like no
This.
one,
You're
yeah,
too
well,
focused.
but also no one wants to share. I mean, at the time, no one shared the behind the scenes. I guess obviously now there are, you know, a few people that are starting to show what it's actually like, but like no
It
one
was
wants
all
to.
under wraps.
No one
Back
wants
then,
to.
it wasn't like a big
Yeah,
thing.
and like
to,
obviously
do
social
day in
media
the
wasn't
life.
as big as it was, you know, 10 years ago. So like I just no one
would've
really,
blown up though
wants to
if you
see
did that
me
whole story.
like walking around or running in a sweatsuit
Yeah.
when as 15-year-old or 16-year-old,
Yeah.
you know, or
Were you
going.
wearing the garbage bags? Like Rocky?
Or it's like they're like proper like garbage bags.
Yeah, proper
They're like
the
they've got like
glad.
yeah,
the
they've
glad
got like
ones.
cuffs and stuff on them, and they're like really thick, so they don't tear. And
Yeah,
things
they're
like
proper
that.
ones.
Yeah, they're proper.
It's
like,
not Rocky wearing the full
yeah, it's not like a
garbage
full garbage bag, but you know, no one wants to see me running around or skipping in a garbage bag, like dripping in sweat,
That's
or like going without food or water for, you know, extended period of times, or you know, no one sees me being hangry, you know, or you know,
the
how-
sauna trips.
yeah,
and-
like all of that crazy stuff. And you know, I kind of spoke about it at the time, and you know, in my close circle, people knew how it was, but
Yeah.
you know, outside of that, everyone just saw the gold medals and
Yeah.
you know, the accolades,
The
but
glory
but
and
yeah, but
everything.
no one saw all of the hard work and stuff that, you know,
That's everything in
Yeah.
life. Everyone sees when you get to the top of the mountain, they
Yeah.
never see all that struggle to get there.
yeah, and even as a, you know, a growing girl in my teenage years, you know, most people kind of
In your
you know,
formative years as
struggle
well.
with, you know, body image and stuff like that. And it's like that's definitely something that, you know, I had trouble with. You know, you don't know where like the line is. Like, oh, I'm putting on weight, but am I
Yeah.
growing, or am I just, you know, have I just like absolutely blown up after a fight, or, you know, things like that as well. And, you know, as you said, I guess my post the other day was you're expected to be, you know, shredded and have like this super lean six pack with, you know, your obliques showing and stuff like that. But just like, it's not realistic for most people. Particularly, you know, and particularly for girls as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just kind of like saw other people kind of striving for the same thing, and so I didn't know any different again. And so I guess it's been kind of eye-opening to know that, or to learn of what like truly
health looks like.
True health looks like, and like fueling my performance, and kind of having to change my mindset towards, you know, fueling myself and not having to worry as much about, you know, how much I weigh or my physique or anything like that. Whereas when I was growing up, it was like, okay, you know, I've got to make sure I don't put on too much weight because I don't have to cut more weight when I get to the next fight.
When you get to the next fight.
Or I don't want to go up to a bigger category because, you know, I'm already short, and, you know, I don't want to have to fight taller people, and, you know, all of these things. And so it was a kind of a very...
Would have been a massive mental battle.
Yeah, a very odd like thing to juggle. And obviously then going into rugby league, it was like, okay, I'm playing in the middle, but I'm one of the smallest people on the field. And, you know, people would come up to me and make comments and, you know, ask questions, or being like make comments about the food that I was eating or things like that as well. And it's just like...
Yeah, but locks are usually the shortest on the field anyway.
Yeah. But, you know, when I was playing in Western Sydney, I was I was much smaller than all of my, my, you know, peers and, you know, the other teams. But, you know, outside of that, it was like, you know, I had people commenting on, you know, I guess the food that I was eating, or being like, oh, you know, now that you've made weight, like you can, you know, eat Maccas or whatever. I'm like, well, looking back at it now, I probably, you know, obviously it wouldn't have been ideal, but I probably could have done that when I was, you know, in camp, if I'd been a little bit more strategic or a little bit more educated on the topic, instead of going like completely cold turkey and just like not eating anything bad or anything like that. It was just...
That's what your coaches
and
to do.
that's all, again, that's all I knew at the time. And, you know, that started to change in the back end of my career, and I got a little bit more educated and had some more resources available to me, and I was able to kind of like overcome those, you know, misinformation, the struggles in regards to that. And, you know, I think now I'm in a pretty good space where, you know, I can use my knowledge now to either help other people going through the same thing, or for my own training and stuff now.
I like that. And you mentioned before the whole weight cut and how some women lose their periods. I think you mentioned there's a name for that.
Yeah, so it's...
REDS?
So like LEA is low energy availability, and then like RED and then little S, it's relative energy deficiency. And it's basically like long-term chronic undereating. And so then that starts to present symptoms, and then if it like goes long enough, it then turns into REDS, which is like quite serious. And so the loss of period is a common symptom in females, that if you're either undereating, you either delay getting your period or you just lose it. And so you can get it back, obviously, by reducing your exercise and, you know, increasing the amount of food and stuff that you're eating. But like it can take months, years.
It can take ages.
It can take a long time. Yeah.
The reason I brought that up again is because you mentioned it in weight cuts or weight cutting sports, which is obviously very common in there, but it's also, I feel like, very common in general life, especially girls in that period of time that you were talking about, 12 to 18, those formative years where they're skipping meals, not wanting to eat because they're focused on their body image, end up losing their period, and they don't understand it. How would you go around teaching that to that age group?
Obviously, it's a pretty complex question. Like, there's a lot of contributing factors.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
Yeah, it's a massive one. And, you know, I think from my experience of being an elite athlete and, you know, struggling with some similar issues in my, you know, my teenage years and things like that, that, you know, it's just purely, I think, around education and just trying to kind of shift people's perspectives and opinions on the topic. And, you know, if they are an athlete, or if they're just like a general Joe Blow who just likes to exercise, or is, you know, really stressed or something like that, or concerned with their body image, it's hopefully, you know, getting a pretty holistic view of their health. So whether that's getting a GP or a psychologist involved, a nutritionist or dietitian, you know, whatever like other issues that they're struggling with, whether it's like an endocrinologist if they're having issues with their period, or, you know, PCOS or anything like that, it's kind of like a holistic approach, and they need to address each area.
Sort of thing.
But in terms of like the nutrition and just being educated and, you know, actually getting scientific information and knowing how to fuel your body, and knowing that like food is fuel and it's like not something that should be feared, and I guess kind of how to structure your life. And obviously I know there's definitely a shift in kind of social media and, you know, the perspectives that we have, and, you know, what's available to us, you know, originally, or I guess social media was probably, it was like, you know, you've got to be as skinny as possible.
Yep.
Instagram
model status.
Yeah, whereas now, like, I find that a lot of girls are, you know, going to the gym and they want to be strong, and it's all performance based rather than like purely how you look. Yeah. And even, I guess, in my coaching as well, I like to try and Like obviously you can use a scale and measurements and photos and things like that to kind of tangibly see
the results.
But it's like, okay, how do you feel? How do your clothes fit? You know, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you moody?
More the subjective
Yeah,
side.
how are you performing in the gym? Are you hitting new PBs? Are you feeling fitter, faster, stronger? You know, all of those kind of things. Is not just, I guess, the weight on the scale or how skinny you are. It's like, okay,
100%.
how cool is it that I can do a chin up that I could never do a chin up before, or that I can do 5 push-ups, or that I can, you know, squat 70 kilos, or whatever your goal is, or wherever you are in, I guess, your fitness journey. But yeah, I'd say it's probably one, a holistic view and involving different areas of the health industry in having like a collaborative approach, and then 2, probably just education. And then 3, obviously social media and exposure to other ways.
The information that you get, sort of thing.
And like seeing people like, you know, Tia, who are like multiple time CrossFit World Championships, like she's jacked. But it's like you don't get like that from, you know, skipping meals and things like that. So I think, having more people in that space now that and what's her name? She's the rugby player from America, and she's now just signed in England. She's like massive all over TikTok. She I can't remember her name. She was on Dancing with the Stars. I can't remember her name. I'll find it. We'll come back to that. But she like is another advocate.
I'll look it up now.
She's like another advocate for, you know, fueling your body and being big and strong, and you know, owning that and owning what your body can do rather than what it looks like. And you know, she's like quite a tall and like built person, and like she's obviously fit. She played in the Olympics, you know, in the sevens rugby, and you know, is very much an advocate of eating enough to fuel your body and to perform, and just not, I guess, giving into, I guess, the societal pressure of looking a certain way or, you know, acting a certain way.
Your messaging all over social media, I've noticed, has been more I'd rather you fight at a stage where you're comfortable and not caring about being like shredded and skinny and trying to cut weight aggressively, but be happy with where you're at.
I think it's more just like a performance thing. It's like, okay, if you're performing better and you're feeling better, you're training better, you're happier, you're probably going to do it longer. You're going to have better health outcomes. You're probably going to have better performance outcomes. And so it's more just kind of like focusing on that rather than the number on the scale or
your body composition.
Your body fat percentage. Like obviously there are ideal body compositions for different sports and power to weight ratios and things like that. Like I'm not denying that having a decent physique or, you know, being health conscious is a bad thing, but I definitely think that people take
there's limits
a little bit too extreme, and it's like, okay, you know, I think the post you're referring to the other day, it was me like standing on scales at a weigh-in, like taking a photo. And you know, I didn't have a shred six pack, but like I was pretty fit, and you know, that
and
fight,
you won.
That fight, I won a national belt, and so it was like, okay,
everyone has this image of people being like full shredded.
Yeah, would me having a six pack potentially made me a better fighter? I doubt it, but me fueling myself and being able to train hard, I did, and I mean, it shows dividends because my record, you know, I wasn't.
And you basically proved
that's what I mean. I wasn't the most shredded, you know,
athlete
or anything like that, but I trained hard, and you know, I had a good fight IQ, and you know,
you got the results.
Yeah, I got the results, and you know, it speaks for itself, and I think hopefully other people can see that can be the case as well.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the type of messaging you're putting out in social media for girls to focus more on performance rather than their body composition.
Yeah, and I think if people are fueling themselves properly and, you know, living a pretty healthy lifestyle, that those things will come in the back end anyway. It's like obviously you don't have to be, you know, a rabbit and eat absolutely nothing to perform.
Broccoli,
but, you know,
and celery.
Yeah, but like if you are performing well and you're training hard, you know, you're going to build muscle and you're going to probably naturally just have a better physique anyway because, you know, you're prioritizing the right macronutrients and nutrient timing and, you know, amount of food that you're giving yourself to allow you to train and perform better, and then that as a result
there's the nutrition side coming out.
Then it'll probably like give you a better physique in the end. It's like if you live a pretty naturally healthy lifestyle outside of, you know, training and performing and competing, I think everything it just kind of like ties in together and works well. And you know, it's not an overnight process, and I think people probably need to realize that it's not like a quick magic pill or a quick fix. It takes
I think it is.
And it takes a long time to kind of, you know, see some noticeable changes sometimes. It obviously depends on how aggressive you go and, you know, what your goals are and, you know, if you've got any time frames or anything like that. But I think most people forget that it took them years to get where they are in terms of their body and stuff. And so it's not just going to change overnight. You need to put in, you know, equally the same amount of time
and
to change it or to, you know, revert back to whatever they want.
You mentioned before that your all or nothing approach, sorry. Not all for nothing, sorry. That's getting it wrong. With that headspace.
She's all for everything.
Sorry?
She's all for everything.
All for everything. There you go. Obviously, being in those high level sports, your mentality. I want to dive into the brain of you for a minute because nutrition, you've given me a lot of education and I like it. But I want to dive into the brain of how you went through those high and low moments and how you maintained such consistency with your career. Obviously, not everyone has that headspace, that determination to just be like next day, next day, next day. How would you educate someone that's going through that athletic period in their life from a younger age to, where they are now?
I definitely think that obviously, again, there are a lot of contributing factors to that. And, as an athlete, everyone is probably aware there are the highest of highs and obviously the lowest of lows, whether that's losing, whether that's not getting contracted or signed or, picked in a team, or getting injured is probably the biggest one. And, I've had my fair share of injuries. I've obviously been an elite athlete for now, like 10 or so years. And so, they've probably been the hardest things that I've had to deal with, the injuries. But I guess just knowing and having a bigger purpose and a bigger why and understanding why you do it. And for me, a massive part of it, one was fun, two, connection. I've made some of my best friends for life and year to year through sport. And so I'd say probably just having a bigger why. And obviously for me, it's now hopefully being able to give back in the nutrition space or even in rugby league, kind of being a role model for younger girls to come through and play. But again, it was the other side to it is that I'm just that competitive. It was like, okay, I've done my meniscus. I'm, having a clean out, which is surgery, arthroscope for those who don't know what a clean out is. But, that's roughly a 4 to 6 week turnaround, 4 weeks if you're professional and have unlimited resources, or 6 as an athlete who has, restricted rehab facilities. But, I knew, that, there was that timeline and that I had something to follow. And I guess also as I've gotten older, I've started to learn that, my identity isn't just me being a football player or a Muay Thai fighter. They're just things that I do. And that took me a long time to learn. Obviously when you're injured and you can't play or you don't feel like you're a part of the team, you're kind of feeling a bit more isolated. So therefore your social life falls down. And then obviously your physical health, because you're injured and you can't exercise, is the best as much as you probably previously have. It's like, okay, for me it was like, if I'm injured, it's like, okay, I can't train. I'm not having much of a social life. If I'm off uni, it's like, okay, I'm not a student at the moment either. Before I had my business, okay, I'm not working. Like, who am I outside of those things? Yeah. And so I needed to kind of do some internal searching to figure out, I guess, what I valued or what I enjoyed outside of those things. But I think as well, having a plan and having a support network that allows you to kind of explore those things. And being at an elite level, obviously I had the privilege of, having access. Surrounding yourself in a good environment. Having access to, resources and people in different health fields to help me get back as quick as possible. But just like having a plan. So it's like, okay, if the term, the time to get back is around 6 weeks, okay, what is day one look like? And then what does week one look like? And then
what are you going to do in that time frame?
And it's like, okay, I just have like targets that I need to hit. And I think it's the same for everything. It's like, if I just do this, okay, celebrate that little win, all right, and then go on to the next thing. And then that turns into the bigger picture. And so I think it's just like a combination of all of those things. And obviously I didn't learn those overnight. It's taken me years to finally learn all of that and get to the place where I am now. And it's still obviously something that I'm going to struggle with until I guess retire. And then that comes with a whole other host of challenges. But it's an evolving process. And I hope that someone can learn from my mistakes or learn from, I guess, my experience as well. And,
you can become a role model for other girls that are going through a similar thing.
So hopefully having a plan, having a good support network, whether that's friends, family, teammates, or like other health services available, having interests outside of your sport. My entire life, like I said, I had the blinkers, so I didn't really have anything outside of those things. And, all of my friends, or when I get introduced to people, it's like, oh, this is Sophie, she plays in the NRLW. It's like, okay, that's true.
She's just known as that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that those things are true, but it's like I'm also a human.
I'm also Sophie.
Yeah, I'm also Sophie. I'm also studying at university. I've also, I've got a partner. I've got other hobbies. I've got, my own business. I've got, other things that I'm interested in, It's just like, okay, that's massive.
Muay Thai champion with multiple belts.
It actually feels really strange to talk about that. It feels like a lifetime ago. Like it was obviously a huge part of my life, and like I'm super proud of all of those achievements. And sometimes I like to pull it out to brag or whatever at parties, or like in a bit of banter. But it seems like a lifetime ago.
So I beat up a lot of boys as well.
So I don't like to bring it up too much because it feels so long ago. But it always kind of creeps around to find me. People, get a hint if I make a comment or someone like, oh, she used to fight, we're like, oh,
Thanks.
thanks. Yeah, if I remember
Yes, I did.
I did. But I guess going to the main points of just having a good support network, having a plan, and then having interests and hobbies and an idea of who you are.
Executing on that plan as well.
Yes, always. Having an idea of who you are outside of I guess your sport or your main hobby or interest.
Nice. I like that. And this is a story I wanted you to actually talk about. Was there was someone that you met in your career in the Muay Thai area when there was when you were going through periods of cutting, and I think you were listening a lot to your coaches or the people that had done it before you, who were not really knowledgeable in the nutrition space. But then there was this one person that you met, I think they were a dietitian. And I feel like that was the person that kind of got you down the nutrition route.
Yeah, for sure. It's so, like I mentioned earlier, it kind of towards the back end of my career, I was in my late teens, I was juggling quite a lot. I was, still performing in multiple sports at a high level, and I was sick of cutting weight, in all honesty. Like I feel like there was something that I was missing and that I could have done a little bit better. And it turns out that was probably, my nutrition and, maybe having a little bit more of a balanced lifestyle might have helped as well. But I ended up going to see a sports dietitian, in the back end of my career, who was very, very helpful and, had a pretty big impact, I guess, on now why I'm in the field that I am and that I'm studying and working in as a nutritionist and, as a student dietitian at the moment. But yeah, they definitely, I guess, changed my perspective on what weight cutting and, fueling for performance should look like and what it feels like. I was going to the back end of camps, still feeling strong, still feeling fit despite being, at a heavier weight or, whatever it else. But, when I was still performing and still winning and still succeeding, it was like, okay, I can do this. It's not just...
And it's so much easier.
Yeah, it's so much easier. I was happier. Moment. I was, less moody and obviously...
I've got garbage bags as well.
Just less of it. But, and people around me were noticing as well. And so I was kind of like, okay, I obviously was quite good and quite successful without it. Imagine how good I could have been if I was, fueling my performance from the start. Or how much happier I would have been, and then able to train.
You'll probably still be in the octagon.
Who knows? But I just think that I obviously made all of those mistakes, and I've learned from it now. But yeah, his name was Ryan Pinto. He was the sports dietitian that I saw, and he's worked with the Waratahs, Australia Cricket, the Rabbitohs, heaps of people now. And he's now, I believe, he's the head dietitian at My Muscle Chef.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah, and so he was kind of.
It's a very formative.
Yeah, they kind of got me into the interest in the field, and then Jordan Sullivan is a fight dietitian as well. He's obviously
he's a gun.
I love his content, and I've got his book and everything like that, and I've been following him
for
a really
book as well.
Yeah, I've been following him for a really long time.
I've been meaning to jump onto that.
It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. So yeah, I guess that was probably the pivotal moment, and obviously going out of school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and obviously my entire life has been based around sport. So if I could kind of stay in sport as long as I could, I thought nutrition was another way of doing that. And I obviously have a good network of people in various sports. So I thought that would be useful in, building my own business and stuff as well. And
that's mad. Yeah, because a lot of people, I've met a lot of our PTs even, whenever I go to interview them, 90% of them say the reason they became a PT was because of sport. Yeah. Because they loved sport and they were like, oh, let me teach it or let me coach sports. But you actually went the other way. You were just like, I can probably teach PT, but rather do nutrition.
Well, yeah, I worked in a gym for 4 years, and I got my ASCA level 1 and things like that. So people were like, "Oh, why didn't you become a physio?" Or like you said, like a PT. And it's like, I feel like I could have done those things, and they were definitely something that I considered. But I feel like I can maybe add more value to people with my background in sport
and cutting
and things like that. I have a slightly unique perspective in regards to nutrition, and I think as well. It allows me to be more flexible with my lifestyle. With footy, I'm often traveling. I've got a really crazy training routine, and it's often unpredictable and it changes quite frequently. So it's like I can work
and that's also
remotely.
Something you're going to be still doing.
Yeah,
for a
and
long
it's
time.
like I can do that
while
I'm either playing,
well.
and for the rest of my life if I don't change career paths. But I think it's pretty flexible with my lifestyle and the way I want to work around football, and I guess how that looks. It's probably a lot harder to be an online PT than I would imagine an online nutritionist.
Yep. Online PT is cooked.
Yeah. Like, it's just like me having to physically be in the room with someone versus me being able to do it over a Zoom or over the phone or over an email is much more flexible when I'm, traveling interstate or traveling overseas or, I have a really, really crazy traveling schedule or training schedule for footy.
Yeah, you would.
She's just as consistent as us when it comes to social media.
I was doing it like for a few years ago, then I had like a pretty bad concussion at footy, and so I just like basically disappeared off the face of the earth for like 6 months. I couldn't look at screens, I couldn't drive, I couldn't train. It was pretty bad. So I disappeared off social media.
Oh, so that was a high grade then? Was it high CT?
No, so it wasn't actually that bad of a concussion, but it just kind of like spiraled into like chronic migraines pretty much. And it just took me a long time to get it under control. And, obviously.
And you weren't playing footy, were you?
No, I had to stop. I couldn't do any exercise.
Oh, 6 months?
Yeah, for 6 months. So I couldn't drive.
So it was a bad one then? Because some footy players just come back on the field.
Like I passed my HIA so that's like the on-field assessment to see if you're okay. Like, so I like smacked the side of my head in a tackle.
So those boys are donuts then.
No, it's like I was okay. Like I passed all of the testing. I just had like a really bad headache and I thought it would go away.
But it just continued.
I literally had a headache or a migraine for 24/7 for nearly 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so I couldn't drive. I couldn't look at screens. I couldn't socialise.
Sleep?
I had to drop out of school. Basically, all I did was sleep and twiddle my thumbs because I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
Like the best part about being sick or injured is that you can like watch Netflix and like chill at home. I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't look at a screen because it made my symptoms worse. And then obviously I had to drop out.
Sleep only.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, sleep. And then as it got a little bit better, I was able to like start doing puzzles and, like just like stuff to occupy myself. I was able to walk. So that was my saving grace. I did a lot of walking, but outside of that, it was pretty much it.
Yeah, you would have fit your 10,000 easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going for a long walk every day and, a lot of sleeping and just trying to rest and, lots of doctor's appointments to try and figure out what was going on. But yeah, no exercise. I had to drop out of school and defer uni. I couldn't train and I was in the middle of a season. No exercise, which was obviously really hard because that's typically, I guess, that's a big part of my stress. How I manage my stress, and it's a big part of my social life. It was, as we kind of spoke about before. So, that was where I really learned what my identity was outside of football and school and as a student, because it got stripped away from me, unfortunately. But thankfully, it's kind of all under control now. But yeah, that was.
Hence why you said injuries suck.
Yeah, massively. But I've had plenty of visible injuries. Concussion's obviously not visible, and it's very complex and pretty scary. So it's definitely something that I take pretty seriously and have taken pretty seriously. Alona Ma, that's her name.
Yeah. Oh, you got
It came back in the end.
Sorry.
What was the name? Alona?
I'm pretty sure it's Ilana or Alona Ma. But yeah, I've had plenty of surgeries and plenty of broken bones and cuts and yeah.
Do you remember them all?
Yeah.
Go list them.
How long back are we going?
As far as you can remember.
All right, here we go. Ilona Ma.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
USA, right?
Yeah. So she's in, I think, the UK now playing, but she represented America in
she's jacked.
Yeah, she's massive. So yeah, she plays in the sevens rugby and played in the Olympics just gone, and she's been on Dancing with the Stars the last few months.
Oh, she would flatten me. If she said run it straight, I'd just run away.
No.
Yeah, no.
But no, she has really, really good content and kind of like talks about just, owning, I guess, who you are and what you want to do and, making sure that you're doing it pretty healthily and I guess, being an advocate for sport and, women's health and things like that.
Cool. And what would you say you're like, obviously you have a big history with weight cutting sports and athletes and you're an elite athlete. You're an elite athlete yourself. Where would you say your kind of direction is with nutrition? Do you see yourself going that way with nutrition?
I think social media is obviously really powerful and, it allows you to kind of reach a wider audience and hopefully educate more people than you would just being able to do face-to-face. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in, exploring further and hoping that, my social media does grow over the next few years and I'm able to grow my business and, drop my part-time job as a support worker to be able to support myself outside of training and things like that. But I guess probably just wanting to have an impact on people like myself when I was younger and, allow them to I guess, avoid all of the mistakes that I made and hopefully have a healthier and happier, I guess, athletic career in terms of their nutrition and body image and those kind of things.
Up and coming fighting dietitian.
Yeah, and you said support worker as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How long have you been doing that for?
2 and a bit years, I think.
Okay. How's that been?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I
What-
work with psychosocial disabilities.
Okay.
Yeah, so people with schizophrenia, borderline personality, those kind of things.
Wow. You do so much. How's the scheduling, like your week, like your training? What does that look
She's got a
like?
good calendar.
Oh,
Yeah, I have a very good calendar. So like
I'd hope so.
in the NRLW season, I also had uni, but I was also working. So uni was a couple of days a week. I'd work one or two of the other days, and then I'd probably have one day where I did appointments or, assignments or, whatever running around that I had to do or going to physio.
Or training.
Yeah, or doing extras. But, in pre-season, we were training 4 or 5 days a week for 4 hours.
Jeez.
That's nuts.
Yeah, and then during the season...
That's your biggest period, right, of training?
Yeah, and then during the season, it's like, okay, we've got training 3 or 4 days a week, but then we've also got to travel and play, and so that can take up, basically your entire weekend. And so it was like I'd come home.
Yeah, because it's a fly in, fly out.
Yeah, and then I've still got my...
Staying over sort of thing.
Yeah, I've still got my assignments. I've still got, my social life that kind of gets put on pause for 6 months during the season. But, it's chaotic. I obviously have to kind of juggle all of my commitments, and work usually takes a back seat because, I want to succeed at schooling and be good at what I do. And obviously the same at football. I want to be able to put all of my effort into it and, being a good athlete and performing. Right? Yeah, exactly. And so unfortunately, work often has to take a back seat. But, I'm hoping now with my new nutrition business that the flexibility and it being remote is there, and it'll allow me to kind of be a little bit more balanced and have a little bit more financial freedom and stuff as well as training and going to school.
100%. Because something that you're really good at that I've already noticed like pretty early on is that in periods during the year, you're going to be busier with the sport or busier with your business or busier with uni, and you just tone down the other aspects of your life. So I do know that you kind of cut down uni at some period when you're in heavy NRLW season.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. So the first 3.5 years or 2.5 years, I did it full time, and so the back end of the third year, I had to go part time because I was dying.
Too much.
Trying to do it
so
all.
like you just dial it down a little bit.
Yeah,
while
so
you're
I did it.
focusing.
Yeah, I did it full time up until that point, and then it was getting too hard to juggle everything, and I didn't obviously want to do poorly at school because I also really value my education and my results.
What you're building as
and
well.
I'm really competitive, so I wanted to get good marks. That was kind of it. It was just like it was a hard decision. Like I definitely didn't want to do it. It took a little bit of convincing, but I knew that it was probably going to be the best decision for me
for you
in terms of my
It
sport.
might take a slightly longer time, but at the end of the day, like you at least get to focus heavily on both.
And I knew as well, like football's not an infinite career. I know that it will end at some point, and it's not something that I can do forever, and that I can either study or work for the rest of my life. And so I am obviously prioritizing football or rugby league at the moment, and school is probably my second priority. And then it was the support work, which was obviously my form of income outside of football. But now that I have like the nutrition business, it's kind of tying into my studying as well. And so I can kind of just have those two things to juggle rather than 3 or 4. Yeah. And so my goal next year is to be able to drop the support work so I can focus onto those two things.
There we go. But if you're anything like Ronaldo, he's almost 40 and he's still playing a high level.
I hope so. And even if I do, obviously will stop playing at some point, and if I can stay involved in the game and in the rugby league world with my business, or
in some way,
or
become
even
a dietitian for one of the teams,
or even whether that's coaching as well. Like I have a lot of experience coaching in different sports. I worked at a gym, like a S&C gym, for 4 years. I worked at the Muay Thai gym for I think 8 years. I also have done stuff for the NRL and a lot of community events with the Tigers as well. So like I'm very comfortable coaching, and so I think
versed.
and like I obviously have a pretty good understanding of the like tactics around football. So I think combining all of that together, that could be something that I do in the future. But plenty of opportunities. We'll just see where it takes me.
It makes me happy that I'm able to, or we're able to do this sort of thing, where we're able to talk to people and just sort of dive into the life of you and your history and how you've gotten through your triumphs and tribulations and where you are now.
If you hear the story and like push out that messaging out to the world.
100%.
We can talk about female athletes and whatnot, but
From
2 boys, it doesn't really make sense.
No,
And I think as well, like I've tried to hone into that and knowing that that's my unique perspective is, okay, I don't just have the theoretical knowledge and I've read a textbook. It's like I actually have lived experience. I know what it takes to balance everything and to do it well, or well enough to become, successful at what I do, regardless of what sport that is for you. But, I think that's where I kind of am a little bit of outside the box, and I don't obviously have much free time, so I can't volunteer like my other, classmates would be able to do. So I think me opening my business and getting my SNA, like nutrition certificate, outside of that, it allows me to get that experience that I couldn't get volunteering because of my I guess, lack of time or lack of flexibility in my schedule. So if I can work in the industry for a few years before I graduate as a dietitian and, start doing presentations and posting on social media and things like that, I think that's where it'll set me apart. And then obviously, like I said, having the lived experience rather than just reading a textbook, I can kind of find the middle ground of knowing, okay, this is ideal. And
you've actually done it.
Yeah, this is ideal, but it's not a perfect world, unfortunately. And so this is probably the next best option. And based on, your circumstances and your schedule and whatever it is, your preferences, I can kind of find the perfect middle ground for each person.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, well, thank you very much for coming in and doing this with us. It's been a privilege to learn about you and your history. But yeah, for now, thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It was great to be on here today.
Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of the Evolv podcast.
Brendan and I have loved having you throughout this whole podcast. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And if friends are interested, share it around.
Yeah, make sure you share and tag us on your Instagram posts, and I'll see you soon.
See you guys. Little boogie to finish.